Thank you, Bruce, in the background. So, listen, welcome back, everyone. So this is the very final session of our 3 weeks of the virtual nature of the high-level forum that we've tried to convene over the last few weeks. And I'm delighted that some of the presenters this afternoon have come back to join us. Paloma, Alison, Kristen, Jeremy, and George are all with me on the screen in front of me just now, and have agreed just to kind of explore some of the themes that have been coming in on the questions that those of you who have joined us this afternoon virtually have been good enough to contribute. Just first, Alison, Paloma, a couple of questions specifically for you and your, particularly, I guess, your regional experiences currently or as you envision. But are there any particular trends? You both touched on a number of both technology and non-technology trends, but are there any particular trends that you envisage presenting most challenge regionally or nationally to you and your organizations or collaborations that are either challenging or present you with most excitement, I guess, in terms of the opportunity that they afford? What are you looking forward to embrace most in the next couple of years?
Perhaps if I was to start, I think everything fundamentally in our sector starts with people. And I think the particular and most far-reaching trend, not only for Australia and New Zealand, but regionally, is the change in the skilling requirements, and also what the feeder system is like. So in Australia's context, we have very distinct challenges in terms of getting geography into the curriculum and making sure that we're kind of engaging children as they move through their primary and secondary into tertiary studies. So there's been quite the downturn in the number of students and courses that are offered at universities. And for those staff that are within the spatial sector, there's a particular challenge for us to be able to accommodate changes, to be able to take into account all of the new technology, to be able to, I guess, incite and excite people to really take on data science as a new capability, coding, to be able to leverage automation in our workflows. You know, that's a particular challenge that I see for the spatial sector, not just in Australia and New Zealand, like I said, regionally. And I'm excited by that because I think it presents us a real opportunity to be able to expand the uptake in the primary, secondary into tertiary, and obviously for our teams as they exist now as we move through and into these new trends. So that's the one that stands out for me. Thanks, David.
Yeah, and Paloma, same question.
Sure, thanks, David. So I was pulling up my cheat sheet because I really like table 1 on the report that states all the drivers and the trends, and also in my presentation I tried to do a bit of traffic light in terms of how we're dealing with each of these trends and how we can identify. So I guess this was thinking that I did with some colleagues in the region. I mean, this is not a formal diagnostics in terms of where we are, but just an initial thinking. And I really believe that we have to have these clear in terms of recognizing where our biggest challenges are and where our opportunities stand. So we decided to put like a green light to, for example, the integration and interoperability. We believe that there's a lot of work in the region. We work very closely with the UN-GGIM and with the statistical offices and Geospatial. So every day, statistics and geography in the region have been more sitting down in the table together in UN-GGIM annual meetings, and we're trying to show them for this driver about rise of new data sources and analytical methods. I think we are going, we're in the green part of this traffic light. We have a lot of digital platforms. We're starting to work with big data processing and also with multiple data sources. And then we identified maybe in the green light some drivers of technological advancements and legislative environment, because we believe that there's a lot of work that needs to be done in these two drivers and, of course, in trends. Technological advancements means a lot of infrastructure requirements that some countries might have challenges with. And we put the red line at the industrial structural shift. I think we are not as advanced as other regions in terms of how we interact with industry and of course the evolution of user requirements that we really need to bring closer to the production and see how we fulfill those requirements.
Yeah, thank you. That's really, really interesting. Do you, Alison, in particular? I mean, you had a segue in your previous answer towards the need for investment in skills. I almost heard you say that more so than, for example, in innovation, where I think the geospatial sector generally is known for many respects innovation, more so than perhaps an investment in skills and skills development. I just wondered if you could expand a little bit upon that. And I also noticed that in your strategic priorities through to 2024 in your presentation, just how important it was going to be to invest in skills development. And just so Jeremy has a warning as well, I just know from your own experience in research and development, Jeremy, you might have a view from the academic sector as just how we embrace another generation of skills development alongside innovation. Alison.
So I agree. So innovation, I think we are innovative. What the changed kind of technology and data environment means for us is that we need more data scientists that are more heavily skilled in fundamental analytics, computer science, and data visualization. But I think it's also important to recognise that so many of the spatial fundamentals need to be brought to bear to this as well. So there's a complement of, being able to leverage those new technologies and being able to kind of perform analytics on the data, but also have that strong spatial fundamental. And I can't help but think in a previous role that I had in the GeoWin organisation here in Australia, it's really about how do we bring kind of data scientists and analysts together so that they can fuse and learn from each other. And I think that was a really good initiative. Just recognising that the deep speciality that we have in spatial science needs to be complemented with someone that's equally kind of savvy in an ICT and data science discipline. So I think that's something that potentially we can look to, and especially within the ANZLIC strategy 2020 to 24, there's a lot of intergovernmental bodies and peak bodies that we can actually leverage experience from, so that we can actually expand that skill base and bring those fusion of skill sets together. So just some kind of musings and thoughts there, David.
Yeah,
in
really
terms
interesting.
of shortages. Yeah.
Really interesting. And Jeremy, from your own observations in the academic sector particularly?
Yeah, I think it is an interesting time. I think part of the reason I chose the three things I chose for the sort of technical talks was because they're inherently not coming from the geospatial sector primarily themselves, or not entirely. The vehicles are coming from a different kind of sector, but are inherently very geospatial in their operation, increasingly as they become more automated. That integration with kind of utility data and smart buildings and architecture, that's coming from outside geospatial. I think it's and then there's the quantum computing, but I think it's very important that people who are coming to our sector understand data in fundamental ways, are open to a much wider range of experience of what kind of geospatial information means in the future, in order that we can both link to all these other domains, but take the opportunities that they present for us as well. A lot of the geospatial will interlink and interrelate all of these different domains of information, and it's that sort of data-centric organization becomes the key, and the skills to understand that. So beyond going and saying that students need to program. Students need to more deeply understand data in all its incarnations, and how the geospatial and the location component threads between all of that.
I think, thanks, Jeremy. I have the benefit this afternoon of seeing some of the questions, and it's almost the wider reflections, I guess, rather than even questions of the audience that are with us online this afternoon. Paloma, you talked about collaboration in your talk, and just how important collaboration across your region is. And I just wondered whether there was a link in your head between that conversation around the importance of skills development, knowledge transfer, capacity building into your region, and perhaps how the GGIM community and the GGIM initiative had a role to play more strongly in accelerating some of that skills development in your region, at least.
Yes, thank you, David. So as we have shown, communication and engagement are key to promote collaboration towards sustainability. So in order to best understand and monitor, promote and pursue this progress, we have been performing diagnosis in the region through our work on the working group on SDI has been performing a diagnosis that it's actually available on our UN-GGIM website. And I think this is a first step in terms of understanding where we really need to work on to bring these collaborative partnerships that promote a capacity building and education, and in this way bridge that geospatial digital divide. So the future trends, without a doubt, are focusing on innovation in data ideas, techniques, and methodologies. And at the same time, they align to standards that permit global spreads of these advancements. So at the regional level, we are working on different initiatives, as I said, the CariGeo initiative in Central America, and our initiative with Page and the Census Bureau, and also through ECLAC involvement in the Data Cube and our collaboration with NASA to try to bring this capacity building to the countries to make replicable and open software data that is easily accessible for countries that really need these kind of jumps to bring them ahead in these trends. And of course, the most important objective is to bring data in a better and faster way that inform, and of course the quicker to the right developments that are taken into sustainable development, because that's our ultimate goal. And sometimes we're always discussing about geospatial information and all the standards, but it's really important to bring in leaders and the leadership to really realize why this is important and how this high quality and timely decision ready data can help them for decision making. Thank you.
Paloma, that's great. It's almost you've just set me up with a great segue to the next question I'd had written down, actually, and it goes back to the earlier presentations when George was actually talking around the sense that we're living in an increasingly sensed world where there's data everywhere, but perhaps we don't always have access to the insight that we need to deliver really truly geospatially enabled outcomes. And George, I wondered whether you had an observation around the switch from maybe just in that sensor environment. We talked about machine learning, just how much effort we need to put into shifting from simply data collection to the derivation of analytically ready data that's fit for insight delivery, almost out of the box, if that's not too simple a language to use.
Yeah, fair. Thanks, David. Let me reflect on a workshop that we had last November, where Jeremy was actually a keynote speaker on geospatial data science. And so, a lot of the folks in that workshop wanted to talk about machine learning, wanted to talk about other technologies that are really important like data cubes as well, bridging that gap between kind of raw Earth observation data into analytic optimized data services kind of discussion. And so you can anticipate what that conversation was about, how to use these technologies to make data readily available for analytic decisions. The part that emerged out of that workshop that really was critical, and this harkens back to Allison's comment, is that the data science really gets conducted in a team environment. We ended up talking about it as multidisciplinary teams, where you've got your data scientists who may really understand statistics or machine learning and the like. You've got your geospatial person who really understands the power of location. And they both bring tools and the like, but in that multidisciplinary environment, it's key that you have the domain experts, the folks that are worried about, for example, biodiversity or other resource consumptions and the like, in order to make good understanding and knowledge from those tools, using location information, using the tools. But in the end, it's about telling a data science story in a multidisciplinary team for a decision making that impacts many people, that gets back to informing our leaders, as Paloma said, with respect to taking that forward into action. So that was, those multidisciplinary teams building on the technology, I think, is a real key theme that GGIM has influenced as well over the years.
Thank you, George. And I think, that really addresses some of the questions. There's a large group of questions around that shift from data collection to data insight. Kristen, I just wonder, from authoring the report and receiving so many of the different inputs, whether that was a trend which you particularly observed from contributors, the increased demand for insight and analytically ready data at the expense of just more data collection per se and data collection technologies?
Absolutely, David. You're right on the money there. So I think one of the key finds that we've had is not just, as you've just said, not just data. It's about bringing it together with analytics, with machine learning, and actually extracting that knowledge from it, and particularly that insight that you wouldn't necessarily be able to get from just looking at the data itself. So you really need to use the technology. And I think we've written an entire chapter around the importance of big data, artificial intelligence, and what the potential is for the geospatial industry. So, and I think linking that as well with what users are looking for and those user requirements, it's not just anymore to provide a product, it's about providing an answer. So I think, yes, we are looking for insight from data, but I think also the users of geospatial data are not just looking for data as such, they're wanting an answer to a question they're asking. So really is about the insight that you extract from more and more data that becomes available from such a variety of different sources.
Thanks, Kristen. So shame Edwina isn't still with us. There's a set of questions which perhaps unsurprisingly were raised around the time when Edwina was talking about the growth in data in our industry that perhaps we know as volunteered geographic information, data that arises through social media feeds and the exploitation of that. Jeremy, I know we've had conversation in the past about the challenges of bias and representation in data sets like that. And that also came up in some of the questions that have been raised this afternoon, is just how representative are those sort of mass data feeds that are available to us, and how within our sector and perhaps within the domain of that being GGIM, how do we make best use of that to inform citizen-based behaviours for governments?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting part of this space. We've touched already on some of the ethical concerns in this. I think another key part of that ethical concern is appropriate understanding of the data and representation within it. Who is represented in, say, a Twitter discussion about something needs to be well understood. So it doesn't mean that these sources like social media aren't valuable. They are valuable, but you have to understand what they're valuable for, if you see what I mean. They're not going to give you a complete representative sample of your whole population, because not everyone in that whole population is online and tweeting, for example. So you have to understand before you go into these things what you get from the different channels of information. And in some ways, it goes back to those issues of data fusion still. And how do you take multi-source data, both in the human side as well as in that kind of hard infrastructure scanning sort of side, and fuse it together to understand the best picture you can get and know about the deficiencies it brings. And that goes all the way back into the technology, going back to the green boxes around heads. Yeah, there's that classic thing that comes up of, have you trained your artificial intelligence system well to recognize all people's heads? Have you just used your mates to train this system so it only represents some subset of people well, and you're actually missing part of the population because you haven't used a complete set of faces in the detector? So that representation and bias goes all the way down from sensing technology through individual data sets online, through to how you combine it together and understand what you get at the end, and then representing that in quality statistics and a representation of what the data is good for at the end.
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy. I think that's really helpful in terms of just an insight to the questions that are being posed, though I hope that plays back to whoever asked it. Alison, I wondered, in the context of your strategy environment, something which I've strung a few questions together, and hopefully this comes out in some way helpfully, that there's a lot of development in this context. We've focused today on geospatial trends, but of course many of those apply across multiple different sectors, and these are maybe loosely put together, such as geodetic, statistical, marine environments, terrestrial data capture, from Earth to space to the environment in between, and of course the whole infrastructure around the land administration and physical infrastructure. I just wonder whether there is something that we need to reflect on how we keep those various communities and application areas together, and whether you've observed any particular trends that just naturally bond those outcomes more effectively than others, and what challenges exist for you in your field.
Yeah, actually, it's a great question, and one that I've been thinking actually quite deeply about. And that is, how do we make sure that we bring the fullness of our capability together to be able to really go after those big issues? For the division in Geoscience Australia that I work with, we're really everything above ground, and that starts with geodesy and it goes all the way to Earth observation satellites. And we tend to specialise around those disciplines. But how is it that we're engaging industry in a really meaningful way where we can bring to bear all of those capabilities? So we've got a couple of initiatives that we're looking at the moment where we start engaging with industry segments, whether that's land management, whether that's marine biodiversity, whether that's emergency management following the big bushfires. How is it that we come together and actually truly engage with industry so that we can bring to bear all of our spatial capabilities? But really importantly, how do we understand what is top of mind for those industry sectors? So what are the key challenges and pressures that they're facing, and how is it we can support them with insights through the amalgamation and the integration of our data and capabilities in a really personalised way that really goes after those big questions and those big challenges. So I think it's something for us as a spatial sector is, how do we actually make sure that we're truly engaging in the right way, on the right issues, with the right groups? And it can be challenging because they're big sectors. Mining sector's big, the agriculture sector's big. So we've got one particular initiative that we've got underway at the moment, which is a grants program, which is given to kind of small, medium business that are actively engaged with the agriculture sector. And we've been able to bring to bear quite a few of our capabilities going after livestock management and land management. So just a few thoughts there in terms of how we engage with industry. Hopefully that answered your question, David.
Yeah, that's great. And listen, folks. I mean, just as a way of starting to wrap up, actually, it's been an interesting few weeks, having reflected on what we hoped would have been a high-level forum here in the UK in London back in April, and we moved it as a result of a global pandemic onto a virtual forum. But I think even at that early time, we didn't really have a reflection as to just how significant COVID-19 was going to present to the world in which we now live. And as we start to perhaps respond longer term to COVID-19 and start to face what is undoubtedly going to be a very different world, I just wondered if we could have a sort of final question to you all, actually, as to perhaps in looking forward and recognizing that in response to a global pandemic, we're probably going to see a new structural shift on its own, certainly for the next 12 to 18, maybe 24 months, and I'm sure beyond. Do you have any immediate reflections on how some of the emerging future trends, the priorities in your regions, your work, your organizations are like to shift? And perhaps, is this an opportunity to leap forward and really accelerate our investment in skills, in technology? Are there particular trends that we ought to embrace more than others? I'm just really interested as a sort of a closing remark for you all as we face into the next 12 months, what feels most important to you? And maybe Paloma, may I come to you first?
Sure. Thank you, David. So I find this a very nice reflection to wrap up with this event, and I take this opportunity to congratulate you, your team, and everyone that was involved in this planning. You certainly were challenged with organizing in a different way the forum, and thank you very much for allowing us to connect and to be here, although we are all facing big challenges through this situation. So I think that we were on the right path to go through future trends, but COVID-19 has accelerated the process in a way that we never imagined. And I'll share a bit of our experience at INEGI, because as you know, we're not only the mapping agency, but we're also the National Statistical Office, and we were forced to suspend all work on ground, and we still rely a lot on household surveys and on-ground work. So when we are forced to stop that, we are forced to look into other sources of data, and of course geospatial information is one of them, and Earth observations has a huge potential. I think that nowadays we were working towards using more administrative registries, using alternative sources of data, but we have been really accelerating in this process because we need to do that now. It's not like we're planning to use it in the future, we're forced to use it now. So really for the region, I guess it has been a very challenging opportunity to make use of technology and to try to come up and to deliver the data that we are obliged to deliver to the user, and also to be able to understand what's going on out there, even though we're all locked down and in our homes. We really need to know what's happening, and we need to rely on these alternative sources of data. So I guess multiple sources of data using technology and artificial intelligence is what COVID has brought to us in this situation. So that would be, thank you, and thanks for organizing and allowing me to share some of the work in the Americas.
Paloma, thank you ever so much. And just conscious of time for all of our panelists here, so maybe just a sort of shorter kind of answer, just to finish off. George, I don't know whether you had any particular reflections on the emerging response to COVID-19 and the impact on our trends.
Yeah, so who would have anticipated, right, 3 months ago that we would be in the situations that we are now? To me, it really is a call to thinking, right? That we need to anticipate, we need greater awareness, we need to understand risks, We need to understand timescales. We need more information in order to better understand our world so we can anticipate things. People are certainly aware of pandemics, had no idea that it would affect us in the way that it has. And so today it's a pandemic, but what other things do we need to understand in a deeper, richer way based upon the information that we gather, based upon a broader diversity of inputs? Certainly, in the United States in particular right now, diversity and equity are very key to us moving forward in a way that we better understand each other and the risks that go forward. And geospatial, of course, is one of those key ways in which we understand the world. So yes, thanks to GGIM and to all the discussion today about a better understanding of the world and anticipating the risks and the challenges that lay ahead, like COVID and others.
Thank you ever so much, George. And same question to Jeremy.
Yes, I think there's two things I'd reflect on quickly. One is the interconnectedness of our economy and systems these days. Pandemic over here means a collapse of an aerospace company over there, and that sort of thing. And so maybe that is not just a geospatial problem, but understanding that interconnectedness and network effects is clearly something we need to understand better to understand economies of the future as much as anything. I think the second thing then is in being tangentially involved with COVID-19 response in this country is maybe it's plus ça change, but how important it is to understand where people are and what they're doing as an overlay on top of that kind of geospatial kind of hard infrastructure component. Now we want to know, are people staying at home right? What's the new capacity of buildings? Where people are going are an essential part of that. And that human dimension remains a really critical part of it. And that goes to some of the issues here of geospatial and statistical integration. That's clearly important for the future.
Thanks, Jeremy. And Alison?
I think for me, it's all about collaboration, right? So how national mapping authorities in the spatial sector can provide authoritative data to support decision making, and importantly, as an integrator of all information that's coming in to accelerate decision making. I think that's kind of what stood out to me. And along with that, as the policy and legislation, including open data policies, are essential for that.
Thank you, Alison. And just to finalize, I think it's only appropriate that we finished with the author of our collective report. And I just wondered, Kristen, whether you listening to that, you felt that there were any things that, with the benefit of hindsight, we would have expected to see more predominantly feature in the Future Trends report, or any structural shift that we might be editing at the last minute to kind of reflect the situation we're now in.
Yes, you've really raised a really good point there. I think it's the interconnectedness. I can't exactly remember. I think it was Jeremy and George who pointed that out, which I think we always knew globalization was around and it was happening. I think we've never realized how much we are connected and how something that happens at one point can easily spread across the globe. But also, I think sort of we've started talking about this ethical debate around privacy and security earlier, and I think sort of when we're looking over the next 12 months, currently, if we're looking at citizen support around extraordinary measures and using personal data to track movement and to understand where hotspots are. However, there have been a lot of voices around the apps that are currently being launched by national governments, as well as social media being used and location tracking, because there is no real clarity around what is government going to do in 12 months and 18 months when COVID-19 is over. So will those measures be retraced, and what is government going to do? It's a real question around trust and how is government going to communicate with citizens, because once that trust is broken, whenever something like this happens again, would citizens be as willing to download apps and to support government using their personal data in order to ensure that we are able to understand how COVID-19 is likely to spread and doing this analysis behind it? So I think we said it before, all of these different trends are actually interconnected, and disruption happens when lots of these different trends are coming together. So we've been talking about a rise of a variety of different data sources and analytical methods, and of course artificial intelligence. And once quantum computing is reality, I think once all of this comes together, we can gain so much insight and do so much analysis out of all of this. I think, yeah, disruption is coming.
So thank you, and what a real pleasure to have facilitated and moderated this afternoon's session. I guess I'd like to finish with just reference back to a quote which Kristen has included in the Future Trends report and seemed to connect with a lot of people in the first session a couple of weeks ago when we talked, and the degree to which at times we overestimate just how much things are going to change in the next couple of years or in the immediate future, but sometimes we underestimate just how much change happens over the long term. And I think, if anything, for me, the advent of a post-COVID-19 world seems to be pointing towards a very rapid acceleration of a number of trends that otherwise wouldn't have presented themselves so closely. And I think the comments in the background, the questions today have probably featured very heavily on that. It's my real pleasure this afternoon just to thank all of our speakers on behalf of everybody who's participated this afternoon. Thank you, Kristen, to Jeremy, George, Paloma, Alison, and of course, Edwina. Thank you ever so much, Alison, for staying up so late. Thank you ever so much to Paloma, George, for getting up so early in the morning and joining us. I'm just going to close off and really thank everyone again for their participation in the Future Trends report. It's a report which we hope reflects the wider views of the community that have helped create it. We're really pleased with the way it's come together, and we just encourage you to contribute any final thoughts to it through the consultation on the UN website. Thank you for the generosity of your comments online today. There are way too many to have reflected, unfortunately, in the conversation this afternoon, but we will certainly try to do that either through the report. We'll find some other ways with the UN Secretariat to do that. My only last thanks personally on behalf of the team working on Future Trends is really just to thank the Secretariat in New York for their huge amounts of support, their guidance, their enthusiasm for really seeing the report through this period when it would have been very easy for all of us to seek some sort of delay to the timescales, and we've stayed true to those and been able to present some of the work today. So with that, I hope to see everybody in the GGIM community sometime soon. It would have been fantastic to be able to spend time with you over coffee now, but unfortunately that's not possible. Stay well, everyone, stay safe, and I look forward to seeing you all sometime very soon. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Steve Blair, the Chief Executive at Ordnance Survey. Steve.
Thank you, David. Really good job today. And it's been a really interesting conversation, you know, the whole societal and technology trends that are shaping the collection and use of geospatial data and how it affects all of us. So, you know, really good session. So it falls to me to close the last of these virtual high-level forum events on behalf of Ordnance Survey. We're really pleased to have been able to support the drafting of this third edition of the Future Trends report, and also to support the UN team in New York on the delivery of these virtual high-level forum events. I also wanted to say a massive thank you to my team at Ordnance Survey for their work on all of the projects. Kristen, fantastic job consolidating all of that insight and producing the third Future Trends report. I know it's been a huge effort, and we can't thank you enough for the richness of the content. Also, to acknowledge the hard work of Claire Hadley in our external affairs team, who's worked really hard alongside Greg Scott and his team in New York to make sure these events were successful. I'd also like to thank Live Group, our technical contractors who have facilitated these events for us. They've been incredibly professional, and just from my personal point of view, it's worked really, really well. And it does show that you can operate in a different way if you have the right technology and the right attitude. So, you know, fantastic job. And then finally, I'd like to say thank you to all of you who have attended these sessions and for being part of what's been a really positive experience for the whole UN-GGIM community. We've had more than 600 participants at each meeting, and from over 90 countries from around the world, which is a phenomenal success. And in fact, the live group guys were telling me that this is a record for them, and it's caused a real buzz around their facilities, because they've never experienced such a wide gamut of people getting up very early in the morning, staying up really late at night, and for those of us in the UK, having a rather pleasant event over lunchtime. So these events really are an important moment to celebrate all of the progress that the committee of experts continue to make, and to be able to share those experiences across the globe with each other. I mean, the attendance numbers alone show how critical geospatial information is for each of our respective countries. By sharing our time and our insight, we can help make each other better use the data to support our societies, grow our economies, and of course, better understand our environment. So thank you for being a part of this global conversation on how we improve the quality and effectiveness of our geospatial capability. Now, I do hope that sometime in the not too distant future, I'll be able to see all of you at a real event where real people can get together and share a coffee. Until then, please take care in these difficult times. I wish you all the best and stay healthy. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Stefan.
Well, thank you very much from Steve to Stefan. And usually when you see me, you know, it's either the beginning of the year or the end. They use me usually as a bookcase. And so I am doing this with very mixed emotions. On the one hand, I'm very, very sad because this was just something really so special and fascinating. And on the other hand, I'm also very, very happy because it was what it was. I mean, we started this with a heart attack because we couldn't have the meeting that so many people had worked for so hard. And it turned in something so beautiful. It was fascinating to watch the global ping pong of interesting ideas. I mean, I thought it wasn't only thought provoking, it was at every moment it was fun. And Steve already stole my thunder as a statistics person by giving the numbers away. I mean, I think we have to net it out, but we may have had over 1,000 people, distinct people over the 3 events. And this is fascinating that we were able to assert the vibrancy of the global geospatial community. And 90 countries is also, even for the United Nations, always very heartwarming. And I'm, as a United Nations guy, I think we ran this meeting really in the truest spirit of United Nations. It was from everybody, for everybody, big countries and small. We left nobody behind, no expert, no country. We showed full respect of what everybody had already worked on in all of these areas, and we were trying to bring it together and build on it and move forward. It's consultative, it's an exchange, and it is forward-looking. The last 3 hours were really a journey into the future, and thanks to the UK for leading this. So where are we now? I mean, does it really have to end? Well, it depends on you. This forum will have to end. Somebody will push the button if I speak too long. But you can do something individually, and we can do something collectively. Let's first talk about you, wherever you are, whether you are part of a country or a university, or a non-governmental organization, or a user of geospatial information, or private sector. We have just what you need. We have the various networks, and we come together regularly through the UN-GGIM family. So please stay connected. And if you are a country, of course, our biggest wish is that our integrated geospatial information framework will translate into an action plan, and real things will be happening in your country so that we move from talk to action. And we are all partners in this, and I'm very optimistic. So if everybody, of the many people around the globe, just takes one action after this to move our global agenda forward, I think we will make a leap forward. collectively, there is still lots to come. You heard a couple of dates. Let me lead you through the path forward. I mean, if you like the IGIF and the future trends, you have until the 26th of June to provide your comments in the global consultation. We have, of course, our UN-GGIM formal meeting, the expert meeting, which would have taken place at the beginning of August physically in New York, but many of you know already, and we will soon formally write to everybody that we had to move it into the virtual space. But after this experience, I'm very confident that this is going to be just as great at the end of August. And the first, there's the 2 days at the end of August and 4 of September. So unfortunately, we will not have side events in the classical way, but I'm sure we will find virtual ways of connecting around the world. And then that doesn't have to be still the end of it. In 2021, when we will have the 10th anniversary of the UN-GGIM, I hope we will all be able to be in New York together and have a big party and celebrate that. And we are also, as many of you know, working on a center of excellence in China with the Chinese government that will be a research and training institute. And if that was supposed to be launched later this year or at the GGIM meeting, but of course, with all the circumstances, this may be a little bit delayed, but I think that will be also a place where we will be able to congregate in the future. And then, of course, in 2022, we have the World Congress, and we are seeking expressions for hosting at this point. So we have a big agenda ahead of us. And I would really hope that many of you will be able to travel along with us. And now let me get to my final pleasant duty to thank so many people, because I know it's a lot of work to put this all together. There are thousands of emails and sleepless nights, but let me first thank our UK hosts. I mean, I think I still look at you as hosts. This will be always, it's a different space, but I mean, you're still Geospatial Commission Ordnance Survey. You have provided the support, and your staff, David, Claire, many in the background have worked tirelessly to make this happen. Then, of course, I want to thank all of the experts and the speakers from 5 continents over the 3 days that we had the meetings, that have contributed so many interesting pieces of information and insights and ideas that will take us into the future. I want to thank Live Group and Bruce and his team to make sure that we all pressed always the right buttons. And so you managed us very, very well. And in my case, this is certainly remarkable because I have a history of pressing the wrong buttons. And then, of course, I would like to thank my team. I wanted to thank Greg and his leadership. I wish I could tell you now you can sleep for a month non-stop. But of course, we have the GGIM meeting coming up in August. So unfortunately, we will have to keep working hard. And I know I can always count on them. I can count on you. And thank you so much. Of course, I couldn't do anything without you. And then, of course, the whole UN-GGIM family, the co-chairs, the extended bureaus, the regional bodies and the networks who have all contributed to this wonderful event. And then all of you who have listened in. So I would really like to thank each and every one. Without you, it would just not have been possible. So if it only shows that the geospatial family, we know where we are coming from and we know where we are going to, and we are very organized, and that I think should make all of us feel good and very, very proud. So let me warn you, London, if you thought you were rid of me, I'm still planning to come at one point. So those coffee ideas are very real, hopefully in a very near future. And this is, of course, true for everybody. So thank you wherever you are around the world. Take good care of yourself in these difficult times. And all I have to say now is I declare these Geospatial Olympics for closed, but just for the moment. Thank you very much.